Okay, so we talked about the red versus the white, the characteristics. You know that the red fibers love to burn fat. So let's, with that in mind, let's look at energy system number 4, which is is fat burning. Specifically, it's called a beta oxidation of fatty acids. Energy system number 4 is effortless when you understand carbohydrate metabolism, because we'll be using the same reactions, transition reaction, Krebs cycle, all of that. Before we burn one, let's recall what they look like. The fats in our body are stored as triglycerides, which are made of glycerol and 3 fatty acids. So the beta oxidation of fatty acids is where we start, so that amounts to burning a single fatty acid. If the molecule was a triglyceride, after you calculated the energy from one fatty acid, you would simply triple it, and you would add whatever glycerol's worth. So we'll go through all of that. But the first thing we're going to do is just burn a single fatty acid. We'll start with a fictitious fatty acid, a 10-carbon fatty acid. And I say fictitious because they're generally 18, 20, 22 carbons long. Again, this is energy system number 4. It is aerobic. You cannot burn fat anaerobically. And there's no particular time limit on it because we have gobs of fat. Even somebody who is too thin for that to be healthy. In other words, you're so thin, that's not healthy. You need to put some weight on. They still have lots and lots of fat. So what we do with the 10-carbon fatty acid is we cut it into 2-carbon fragments. Now, all of the molecules that we deal with metabolically enter the carbohydrate pathway or exit the carbohydrate pathway somewhere. The carbohydrate pathway is the main pathway. Think of the carbohydrate pathway as the interstates that run across the United States. So, interstates, federal roads, I-25, I-70, etc. So all of the highways, county roads, whatever, they intersect the interstates. So the interstates are the main thoroughfares. If you want to drive, for whatever reason, from here to Maine, you're going to primarily be on interstates. You'll use a highway like Highway 24 to go up to Lyman and get on I-70. And once you get way up to the northeast, you'll get off whatever interstate you're on and use a highway, a county road, to get to whatever hotel you're going to in whatever city. So if you picture the carbohydrate pathway as the interstates, the main system. So we need a molecule that we're familiar with that's 2 carbons. So look back through your notes, past week or so. What 2-carbon molecule have you seen over and over and over? Acetyl coenzyme A, exactly. Now what's 10 divided by 2? So we get 5 we get 5 acetyls. Now we have to add 5 coenzyme A's. Now we have 5 acetyl coenzyme A's. See, we have entered the carbohydrate pathway. Now looking at your notes, past week or so, what's the fate of acetyl coenzyme A? Goes into the Krebs cycle. Okay? Now look at a Krebs cycle in your notes, one that's highly detailed. You will see that you get 3 molecules of NADH, 1 of FADH, and 1 ATP. What are those 3 NADHs worth? 9. Everything we've done so far is in your notes. 2. So what's the total going to be? 12. So we have 5 Krebs cycles. We get 60 ATP right there. God, we're already approaching twice a molecule of glucose. This is a fictitious fatty acid. We have not burned a molecule of fat. We have burned, and we're nowhere near finished with it. We have burned 1 of the 3 fatty acids in the fat molecule, and it's a fictitious fatty acid, a 10 carbon, not an 18 or 20 carbon fatty acid.
Just one cycle though? 12?
Yes.
So many.
No. Remember, you don't want to learn that. That's per glucose.
Okay.
So in that chart we made, I stress you don't want to learn things per molecule of glucose. You want to learn things per cycle or per reaction. So since there's 12 in one cycle, yes, there's 24 for glucose because there's 2 cycles. But we have 5 cycles here. Now, see if this is working today. Looks okay. Remember that energy is stored in bonds. So if you break a bond, energy is released. Well, you cut this 10 carbon fatty acid into 5 fragments. You broke a bunch of bonds. Let's visualize that. 10 carbons. Cut it into 2 carbon fragments. How many times did you cut it to get the 5 2-carbon fragments? 4. So 4 times you broke a bond and released energy. Now the cutting is called beta oxidation. For each beta oxidation, you get 1 NADH and 1 FADH. So how many ATP does that equate to? 5, because the NADH is worth 3, the FADH is worth 2. How many times, get back on the big board, how many times did you cut it? 4. So you have 4 beta oxidations. So each beta oxidation is worth 5. So you have 5 times 4. That's your gross amount. Now, focus on the small board for a minute. Notice that you cut it 1 less time than you got 2 carbon fragments. It's always that way. You can go home and play with this on the kitchen table. Take a piece of string and cut it into 3 pieces. I mean, literally, do this. Take a piece of string. Take some scissors. So you cut the piece of string into 3 pieces. How many times did you cut it? Take another piece of string. Cut it into 2 pieces. How many times did you cut it? 1 more time. Take a piece of string. Cut it into 5 pieces. How many times did you cut it? So it's always 1 less. So 10 divided by 2 gives us the number of acetyls and 1 less beta oxidation. Now, if you look in your notes at glycolysis, what is the very first thing we did in glycolysis to the glucose molecule? We energized it. We spent 2 ATP energizing it. Well, we don't spend 2 here, but we do spend 1. So minus 1 to energize gives us 19 net ATP. Correct. So we have 60 from the Krebs cycle, 19 from beta oxidation, 79 ATP. Again, that is from 1 fatty acid. So if it was a triglyceride composed of 3 10-carbon fatty acids, the first thing we would do is double, or not double, triple the 79. Then there's value in glycerol, and we'll get to that. All right, let's burn one more, including burning the single triglyceride and then burning it as though it is or rather, burning a single fatty acid and then burning it as though it is a triglyceride. So how many ATP do you get out of each Krebs cycle? 12. And how many ATP do you get out of glucose from the Krebs cycle? 24, because there's 2 Krebs cycles in glucose. Glucose, 2 pyruvates, 2 acetyls, 2 Krebs cycles. Where am I? Hello? I feel like I'm in space. Savannah. Good morning, Savannah. Did we figure out where I am? I should be here. Okay, so let's burn a single 16 carbon fatty acid. And then we'll burn a triglyceride composed of 16 carbon fatty acid. Now, in reality, in a triglyceride, the three fatty acids are the same. So you don't have to worry about, what if I have a triglyceride and one of the fatty acids is 16 carbons, one is 20 carbons? No. They'll be the same. This fatty acid is fictitious, or rather this triglyceride is fictitious in that they have two saturated fatty acids and one unsaturated. You wouldn't see that. They drew it that way for this picture for the purpose of explaining the difference between saturated and unsaturated. But in reality, you wouldn't have that. You're not going to have to deal with double bonds or triple bonds. You'll be working with just ordinary saturated fatty acids like we did with the 10 carbon unit. A lot of you will go through all the details when you take Chemistry 102 for some of the medical programs. So we've got a 16 carbon fatty acid. How many acetyls will we get? 8. 16 divided by 2 is 8. So 8 acetyls to the Krebs cycle. How many times did we beta oxidize it? Remember, that's the cutting. 7. Okay. So we have 7 beta oxidations. What's each one worth? What do you see in your notes, guys? You just wrote it down. 5. So do we get 35 ATP from beta oxidation? We have to subtract 1 to energize the molecule. All right, now the Krebs cycle. We have 8 Krebs cycles. What's each Krebs cycle worth? So what's 12 times 8? $96. Oh, it is, because 12 times 4 is 48. Okay. So what's our total?
130.
94 plus 30, 94 plus 34 plus 36. Dear God. 138. See, if we all quit using calculators, we'd go back to being able to do first grade math without them. As a group of adults, we could not even multiply 12 times 8 without a calculator.
Get it? And you questioned me.
But you got a calculator in your hand.
I double checked it because you made me second guess myself.
And I stupidly did 6 times 12, which is 72. All right. So that's our 16 carbon fatty acid. So now we're burning a triglyceride composed of 16 carbon fatty acids. So what's the first thing we need to do?
All 2, right?
Don't worry about glycerol. The first thing we need to do,
3.
we need to multiply it times 3. So this is 1 fatty acid. Can we do that without a calculator? Yeah, I know. That's the ATP from our 3 fatty acids. Looking again at the fat molecule, we've got glycerol. Remember, the carbohydrate pathway is the main pathway. Everything else enters and exits the carbohydrate pathway, just like we get on and off the interstates. So how many carbons are in glycerol? Look in your notes. Find a 3-carbon molecule that we've seen over and over and over. What do you guys see? You see pyruvate. All right? Keep your notes right there where you see the pyruvate. What happens to the pyruvate? Glycerol, pyruvate. Where do we see pyruvate? At the end of what? The end of glycolysis. And what happens to pyruvate? What's the name of the next reaction? The transition reaction. And the pyruvate becomes what? Okay. How many ATP do we get from the transition reaction? Why do we get 3? Guys, if you look in your notes and see this, you'll remember it. Otherwise, you're going to have all this crap to go home and memorize. So in the transition reaction, we saw coenzyme A going in. We saw CO2 coming out. We saw NAD reduced to NADH. And that NADH is worth 3. So we've got 3 ATP so far. What's the acetyl coenzyme A going to do? Same thing acetyl coenzyme A always does, right? Going to enter the Krebs cycle. What's the Krebs cycle worth? Just like it was over here. What's 12 plus 3? Get your calculator out, Joanna. So glycerol equals 15 ATP. So where are we? We've got 390 plus 15, 405 ATP. (405 ATP from a single molecule of fat. Compare that to glucose. This is why all animals on the planet, and when I say animals, I realize that includes, that's the kingdom Animalia, so that includes a lot of things that I'm not really thinking about. So maybe I should say all mammals store their energy as fat. I mean, think about what you know about the deer, the elk, the bears, just from, being a human. What do they do all spring, summer, and fall? They eat. They eat to build up the fat reserve to survive the winter. Because unlike us, our kitchen's open year round. Theirs isn't. Their kitchen's buried under the snow. That's also why, and we may have talked about this, we'll talk about it next semester, when do the deer, the elk, the bears give birth? Spring. So the babies have the spring, summer, and fall to get big enough to survive the first winter. An elk gives birth in February, the babies are just going to die. Okay, so moving to exercise now and tying it to aerobic versus anaerobic and the red and white fibers. This is Roman numeral 17. So what is exercise? Might be something you do for fun. Go on a walk with a friend. Maybe you walk the dog. Some of you do the incline. Maybe you do yard work. Exercise may be a part of your life. You might take an aerobics class. You might swim, bike, hike, run. So it might be some structured thing that you do. It might involve competition, like you want to run the Boulder Boulder. But just because you want to run the Boulder Boulder doesn't mean you're trying to win the thing. The winner is going to be somebody from Kenya. You might just want to run the Boulder Boulder. Or you might want to see if you can place in the top 10 in your age group. You might belong to the Lifetime Fitness, the YMCA, whatever. And you go and you swim a few days a week. So it might be structured, but it doesn't have to be structured. Is exercise good for us? Are we supposed to exercise? We all know now that exercise is good for us and it should be a part of our life. We didn't know that. I mean, it's like everything. We had to learn that. Back in the 70s, a person, I believe his name was Kenneth Cooper, he was a cardiologist from somewhere in Texas, I think it was Dallas. And Dr. Cooper said, you know what you need to do to be fit and healthy? You need to increase your heart rate to 70% of its maximum. And you need to hold it there for 30 or 40 minutes. And you need to do this 3 or 4 days a week. He pioneered, quote unquote, aerobic exercise. And people thought he was an idiot. You might as well be telling me I need to go out and start my car and leave it in park or neutral press the accelerator, rev the engine up to 4,000 RPMs, and just sit there and hold it for 20 minutes. Sounds like the dumbest thing in the world. And it would be the dumbest thing in the world. But what happens if you park your car and you leave it for 6 months? Come home to a dead battery, flat tires, sticky oil, a mess. You need somebody to drive your car once a week if you're going to be gone for 6 months. Body was meant to be used. Use it. Doesn't mean you have to run 40, 50, 100 miles a week and end up having your hip replaced like I am because you did run 100 miles a week for way too many years. Just walk the dog. Do anything that's fun. After Kenneth Cooper sort of pioneered aerobic exercise, people like Jane Fonda started making workout videos. They were these things, I don't guess any of you have ever seen them. They were called VHS tapes. They went in this device called a VCR. And the quality wasn't very good. And when you paused them, everything was blurry and shaky. But people would, do the class with her. And she would say, sing along with me. If you can't sing along with me, you're exercising too hard. They're trying to keep the heart rate right at 70% max. So your classic aerobic exercise was to be done at 70% of your maximum heart rate. What Kenneth Cooper suggested. So the charts on the wall in the gyms, any gym, the owner's manual that comes with an elliptical, a stair climber, a rowing machine, a treadmill, anything. They're all based on this. Of course, we know a lot more about it today than we used to. And of course, it's impossible to keep your heart rate at one number. Makes more sense to keep it in a range. And so this sort of got modified to be 70 to 75%. And then people started defining high aerobic, which you would say was from 75 to 80%. And of course, then in these scenarios, people were actually monitoring their heart rate. In some cases, they would stop and take their heart rate, which doesn't work because as soon as you stop, your heart rate starts to plummet. Some people wore heart rate monitors and a very uncomfortable strap that went around your chest and a watch that didn't tell time. All it told was your heart rate. Now, probably kind of like cell phones. Remember when only a few people had cell phones? Now everybody has a cell phone. It's just like the internet. There's an assumption now that you have the internet. When you go to college, there's an assumption that you have the internet. Well, the modern watches, the Garmin, the Apple, probably, I don't know, half the people have one of those. You can glance at your watch and you can see your heart rate. So it's become easier and easier and easier to exercise based on your heart rate. But a lot of people don't want to fool with any of that. There's this thing called perceived exertion. So when you're here, and you might call this low aerobic, you can probably carry on a conversation with somebody. Now, not if it's your first time to run, if you're a couch potato and you decide to take up a running habit. No, you're not going to be doing anything but sucking wind and vomiting. But if you're a runner, a swimmer, a biker, and you're used to it, if you're in this classic aerobic, low aerobic zone, you're going to be able to talk. You move into the high aerobic zone, and it's considered comfortably hard. So now your sentences get shorter. You take more breaths between the shorter sentences. Again, this is perceived exertion. Because a lot of people just could care less about their actual heart rate. Then the fitness gurus, they take it further. 80 to 85%. This is called your lactate threshold zone. This is where people train when they're trying to get faster. And that's not to say you need to try to get faster. Again, you might want to run the Boulder just because you want to do it. Sounds like a cool thing to do. Go up and interact with 40, 50, 60,000 people. Then sit in the stadium after the race and watch the elite runners come in. Watch the jets fly over and all that cool stuff. But maybe you want to win, you know, maybe you want to win the Mercedes or whatever. And then people take it even further in some cases. You could talk about 85 to 90, 95 to 100, whatever. Of course, when you get into these things, you got people that really know what they're doing and they're training for something highly specific. Percent maximum heart rate. Well, what is your maximum heart rate? The fastest your heart, God, it's the fastest your heart is capable of beating. Your maximum heart rate, my maximum heart rate, they're not going to be the same. Everybody's is unique. But it's the absolute fastest your heart is capable of beating. It's like talking about a car. What is the absolute, you know, you get the right permissions, take some car to a track. What is the absolute fastest speed this vehicle can go? That's how it is with your maximum heart rate. Now they went out into the world and they plotted the maximum heart rates of hundreds of thousands of people based on age. And they used treadmills, they used stationary bicycles. They wanted to eliminate variables. In other words, they didn't want people outside on the bike or running where there are hills, there might be wind, rain. It's warmer today, it's colder tomorrow. So it was done in a laboratory, again, on a stationary bike or a treadmill. And they found that as you age, your maximum heart rate decreases. So we know that maximum heart rate decreases with age. They use this line in a process some of you have heard of. Some of you might have taken statistics. Many healthcare programs require statistics. That's why I say some of you may have taken it. But there's a method called linear regression, and I don't care if you remember that phrase or not. But using linear regression, they created the equation for that line. And the equation that they came up with is that maximum heart rate equals 220 minus your age. Then over the years, they refined that a little bit, and they said, actually, that's for males. It will work better with females if you use 225 minus your age. Whatever. Now, the problem with this data, again, this straight line, this data, it comes from inducing maximum heart rate in hundreds of thousands of people across America. Well, the problem with this is most Americans are sedentary. Most Americans can't run a mile. Here, I'll give you $100 if you can go run a mile. Yeah, you take 30 minutes, I don't care. Most people can't do that. They can walk a mile, but they can't run a mile. Americans are overweight. We don't eat right. And if you do eat right, good. I'm glad. I'm happy for you. I'm proud of you. But as a society, we don't eat right. We don't exercise. I see you guys out there circling the parking lot looking for the close space. Why don't you just pick the space that's farthest away? I see you taking the elevator when you're nothing's wrong with you. Why? My daughter has a sleepover. It's 2 houses down. It's raining. I'm going to take her in the car. What, the rain's going to melt her? Throw her out the front door. Let her walk in the rain. It's 2 houses down. You have cultures where people walk 3 or 4 miles from home to get on the train. They get off, they ride into the city, they get off the train, they walk 3 miles to the office. They leave the office, they walk 3 miles, eat lunch, walk 3 miles back to the office. They get off work, they walk 3 miles to the train, they get off the train, walk 3 miles to their home. Nobody in America does that, okay? Not even in Manhattan do people do that. We drive, we're lazy, we're overweight. Our children are overweight. Look at childhood obesity, an epidemic. So, most of these people that they gathered this data from were those people I just described. And they probably didn't live in Colorado. We're the healthiest state in America. But picture some of the other states, and I don't really want to start naming them. You can figure that out for yourself. But what happened, as it turns out, people who are fit and healthy aren't on this line. They might be on that line. Or maybe they're on that line. Or maybe they're on this line. And I don't know. You don't know. So if you want to know your maximum heart rate, this is crap. The only way to know one's maximum heart rate is to induce it. And I'm not saying you need to know it. I'm not saying you need to induce it. But if you want to know it, those formulas won't work. Well, they might if you're sedentary. The fact is, these formulas work for, we'll say, 90% of the population. But the 10% they don't work for are the people who would even want to use them. That's the irony. They work for almost everybody. But the 10% who care, who want to be fit and healthy, for whatever reason, the formulas don't work for them. So the only way to know it is to induce it. And I don't suggest you do it. In fact, I suggest you don't do it. And I'm being recorded as I say that. I don't have a medical license. I don't suggest you do this. I suggest you don't. If you want to do it, though, you can pay and go to Boulder and pay and have it done in a lab, or you can just do it yourself. It's pretty simple. So if we're talking about 70% maximum heart rate, well, you would simply say maximum heart rate times 0.7. So if your maximum heart rate is 190. Then 190 times 0.7 would be 70%. So what's that? 0, 6 times 7, what's that? 63, 6, 7, is that 143, Joanna?
133.
143? Okay. Okay. So for Tom, 133 beats per minute is 70% maximum heart rate. But even this is stupid. So let's consider Tom and Bill. And we'll make the math mathless. We'll give them both a maximum heart rate of 200. And they want to train, because remember, it's not practical to train at a heart rate. They want to train between 70 and 75%. So 200 times 0.7 is 140, and 200 times 0.75 is 150. So they could go for their run or their swim or their bike and try to stay between 140 and 150 beats a minute. And that would be classic aerobic exercise. But here's why that's stupid. Tom and Bill are very, very different. You see, Tom's been active all his life. Tom basically grew up in the YMCA. As fast as indoor volleyball ended, indoor soccer started, and he participated in both. And when indoor soccer ended, outdoor soccer started, and he did that as well. That ended, and it was basketball time. He did that as well. And year round, in 8, 10, 12-week sessions, there's always something at the YMCA for little kids. And I don't know how young they can start, 6, 7, 8 years old, and they can go until they're 10, 12, 14 years old. It's for little kids. There's always something. That was Tom. Then Tom, in 6th grade, he started wrestling and swimming and cross country. He wasn't good at all of them, but he loved them, did them. And through middle school, he was active. He competed. He sucked at everything, but he enjoyed it. He did it. Then in high school, he figured out he was actually good at basketball. So he did that, and he kept running cross country just because he enjoyed it. So you see, Tom's been active all his life. And when Tom's sitting like you are now, and he looks at his Apple Watch or whatever he has on, he notices that his resting heart rate is 62. A textbook resting heart rate is 70. Why is his 62? Because he's fit. Bill is the opposite. Bill pays the neighbor's kid to go get the mail. Bill pays the neighbor's kid to mow his lawn. Not because he has the money to, because he hates to do it. He gets out of breath. He sweats. Bill's trained his dog to bring him beer out of the refrigerator. Bill's exercise is reaching for and pushing the buttons on the remote control. Bill's also 60 pounds overweight. Bill's resting heart rate is 82. He's not healthy. So if we look at something called their heart rate reserve. So that's the difference in going from a state of rest to a state of maximal exertion. So we have here, what, 138? And we have here 118. Joanna, don't let me blow first grade math again. So Tom can move 138 points from a state of rest to a state of maximum exertion. Bill can move only 118. So how can it be as simple, that is calculating your aerobic zone, is taking 70% of the maximum heart? It's not that simple. It's still simple, but it's not quite that simple. So maximum heart rate is archaic and stupid. Instead of percent maximum heart rate, you want percent intensity. So calculate Tom's training heart rate between 70 and 75% intensity. So it goes like this. Heart rate reserve times percent intensity. So look what we're doing. We're not taking the percent of the maximum heart rate. We're taking the percent of the heart rate reserve. Then we're adding the resting heart rate to it. So it's just slightly different. Again, instead of taking the percent of the max, take the percent of the reserve and then add the resting to it. So we have a reserve of 138 times 0.7 and a reserve of 138 times 0.75, because I said calculated at 70 and 75%. And add the resting back to it. $138, 70% of that, resting added to it. 166. Now, when you calculate heart rates, they have to be whole numbers. There's no such thing as my heart rate's 142.3. That doesn't exist. So 166. That's not right. Things wrong. 138 70%, 62. Some of you do the math as well. So this one's 159. As you said. Now I want you to understand the formula. Heart rate reserve times percent intensity. Where did we get heart rate reserve? Hint. Max minus resting. So let's expand the formula. So we have maximum minus resting times the percent intensity then you add the resting back to it. Now, when we think about exercise, aerobic versus anaerobic, your aerobic world is going to be up to 80% intensity, not maximum heart rate, intensity. And your anaerobic is going to be above 85% intensity. Look at that chart closely. What's sort of missing? We got up to 80 and we got over 85. What about 80 to 85? What did I already tell you about 80 to 85? It's in your notes. Huh? It's what range? It's your lactate threshold range. So it's not in that chart, this chart. So what happens is, and this takes us back to the fate of pyruvate. Maybe you have to flip back in your notes. I talked about this many times already. So the pyruvate may be converted to acetyl coenzyme A, may be converted to lactate. This is energy system number 2, or rather number 3, and number 4, and is the aerobic pathway. This is energy system number 2. The anaerobic pathway. And I stressed repeatedly that this is not one car at a fork in the road and it has to go left or right. There are 1,000 cars at the fork in the road. Percentage of them will go left, a percentage of them will go right. So our pyruvate will take the aerobic pathway as long as oxygen is available. When oxygen is not available, we have to take the anaerobic pathway. So imagine that you're exercising, whatever you can tolerate visualizing for you, because I know some of you don't run and probably hate the idea of it. So maybe picture you're swimming. Maybe picture you're at an elliptical class at the gym, and there's a leader and music. Anything you can picture that you think would be fun. And so as you go faster and faster and faster, so when you get on that elliptical and the instructor introduces themselves, music starts, and you start pedaling. At first, you're going to be 100% aerobic. All of your pyruvate's going to take the aerobic pathway. And you get going a little faster, a little faster, a little faster. Most of your pyruvate is taking the aerobic pathway, but a little bit of it's taking the anaerobic pathway. And you get going faster. Still, most of your pyruvate is being converted into acetyl. At this point, you might be good job. Seriously, thank you. I write 35, you say it should be 25, and I change it to 32.
Now there's some stuff going on with you, Larry.
At this point, you might be in the sort of classic aerobic zone. And you pick up the pace a little bit. You're getting out of breath now, but you're still primarily aerobic. Most of your pyruvate is taking the aerobic pathway. So you see, guys, it's not binary. It's not like the lights in here. They're on or they're off. It's not that you're aerobic or anaerobic. It's what percent is aerobic versus anaerobic. And you pick up the pace a little more. And you're close to 50-50, but you're still primarily aerobic. You pick up the pace a little more. Now you're 50-50. And you pick up the pace a little more. Now what happened right there? You shifted from primarily aerobic metabolism to primarily anaerobic metabolism. This, my friend, because we've talked about exercise, is the lactate threshold. And for most people, it's 80 to 85% intensity. The people who can do these extraordinary things, like maintain a 6-minute mile for a marathon, 26.2 miles, or dear God, maintain 5-minute, 20-second mile pace for a marathon, their lactate threshold is more like 90 to 95%. A lot of that is genetic. Some of it is training. But they have the genetics that allow the training necessary to achieve that. But for most of us, it's going to be right in there, 80 to 85%.
And how do we calculate intensity? Is it just perceived exertion or?
No, I told you, remember?
Intensity is in that equation.
Right. The intensity is, instead of saying, I want to do classic aerobic exercise, so I'm going to train at 70% maximum heart rate. No, train at 70% intensity.
I know you swap out the intensity. I was just wondering, it's kind of arbitrary. No?
It's just a different name because it's instead of taking the percent of the maximum heart rate, you're taking the percent of the how intense are you training.
Right. Is it perceived exertion? Is that how?
No. It's saying that we can't just use this because this doesn't take into account where you are. You have a resting heart rate of 60. This person has a resting heart rate of 80. So we have to take into account the heart rate reserve. So take the percent of that, then add the resting back to it. And then the powers that be just named it intensity.
Okay.
They could have named it alpha. And in fact, Joanna, the whether we say that's low aerobic, that's high aerobic, that's lactate threshold, the people doing it the wrong way are going to say 70 to 75% max heart rate, 80 to 85% max heart rate. But what we're doing is we're doing it the right way, and we're saying 70 to 75% intensity. So we're taking into account the starting point, the baseline. I mean, I didn't name it intensity. That's just.
Yeah, absolutely. I just,
If it would have been up to me, I would have texted you.
I'm old enough to remember when.
What the hell should we call this, Joanna? Let's be sure and call it something that doesn't make sense, right? Like the condyles on the tibia that are really fatha. Okay, we're not finished, but we're out of time. So what I'm gonna write right there under number 7 in my notes is need to make the chart. Wait, don't get noisy. I know a lot of you have this because a lot of you printed everything in the online resource module first week of the semester, and you got this 500-page binder with all of it. But if you don't have this, you want it. It's called Calculation of Heart Rate Training Zones. When you see something like this, or this, just ignore it. This document was created during the pandemic when most people were at home. And when this document was created, I was on campus for labs, but off campus for lectures. So these things that I've highlighted in yellow tie each document to the lecture outline. You don't need that, so just ignore it. But read this. There's the formula. You'll see numerous examples. Look right there, I'm pointing out there's no such thing as fractional heartbeats. And when you read this, if you read it, as I stressed day one, don't skim it. Read it, word for word, nice and slow. You'll actually enjoy it. Because all of these pandemic documents I wrote for people who were stuck at home, bored to death. You know, and if you remember some of that, we were almost scared to go outside. Will we get arrested if we go outside? And then the crazy thing was, you were allowed to go to the liquor store. Can I go outside and walk the dog? No way, man. I don't know how all that worked. I ignored it. I had special paperwork from the president and the governor. So I did what I wanted to do. But anyway, if you read it, you'll enjoy it. And you know, I talk a lot about it. There we go. Lactate threshold zone. Right here, I'm talking about some world records, and these world records have probably been busted by now because this was written in 2020. But it explains in great detail what I just did with numerous examples. So find that document, read it, use it, know it. All right, let's see. Did we record? No, we didn't. I'm kidding. Yes, we did. It says we did. Monday it said we did, but then we didn't. Some days when it says we did, we have video but no audio, or audio but